Hey guys, and welcome to our first full-length Hypermobile Hangout. For those of you guys that don't know, my name is Eva. I am the owner and founder of a Washington, D.C. based studio called The Line Method. I have hypermobility or hypermobile spectrum disorder, HSD for short. And today I am here to talk to you about all things hypermobility related. I recently had a question posed to me in response to my first Hypermobile Hangout kind of introduction. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out and it'll explain what we're doing here. But this question was posed to me by a follower and friend named Catherine. So shout out to Catherine for coming up with good ideas. And I thought it was a really, really good place to start because literally her question was, where do I begin? She was talking about how she has like hypermobile elbows, hypermobile meaning your elbow joint is going to go beyond the range of motion in the elbow case, beyond 180 degrees. And she made a really good point. She was like, it doesn't really bother me now, but I'm not sure if it means I'm just like really flexible or if I have some sort of syndrome. And what do I do? How do I figure this out? And so I think this is a really good jumping off point for our first Hypermobile Hangout and just kind of breaking down, where do you begin when you think you have hypermobility, when you know in your heart you are hypermobile, and you just haven't had any sort of like diagnostic done. Because for those of you who have had a diagnostic done, you guys know probably that it can take a while to come to this landing because hypermobility is can be so much more than just like a cool party trick where your body's all like Gumby and loose and you can move around in crazy positions. For a lot of people, it resonates as chronic pain due to joint instability, due to chronic inflammation caused by the instability. It can manifest as like labral tears. Not fun stuff. And even more so, it manifests as a lot of like what we call like autonomic syndromes. So things like gastrointestinal issues, POTS, POTS is like a big one people talk about now. And there's like all this research coming out, which is super cool, about how hypermobility can affect your body. So I think, just a good jumping off point is kind of sitting down with yourself and being, first things first, just being like, okay, do I think I'm hypermobile? And how do I think it is impacting my life? Because there are people out there who are hypermobile who will never have a symptom in their life beyond being able to do like the cool backward bendy party tricks. There are people out there who just like are super, super mobile. And for the most part, it's not really going to impact their life. But on the flip side of that, there is a big part of the hypermobile population who come with periphery symptoms, a lot of the ones that I just mentioned earlier. So don't, think that being hypermobile is inherently a bad thing. Honestly, it can be like a very cool experience, but there are also a lot of steps that you can take to helping manage it when you are experiencing it in a little bit more of a negative way. So first thing is go in and check it in with your doctor. And if you broach the subject of being like, okay, like I think I'm hypermobile, I don't really know what path that means I'm going down, I don't know if I have Ehlers-Danlos, because though hypermobility can be kind of suggestive in terms of like diagnostic testing, there are definitely ways where a medical professional can help you figure out like, okay, like, are you super bendy? How are these symptoms manifesting? A primary care physician who has experience in hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos, HSD, can help you figure that out. Another option is to get a referral for a geneticist, and that is actually how I found how I ended up coming to have my diagnosis. I went to my primary first, and she just happened, by a total stroke of luck, as I feel like it happens for most of us, to put me in all these different positions and be like, and she would just said it super offhandedly. She was like, oh, you've got Ehlers-Danlos. And it was another year before I actually got into a geneticist and was like, okay, this is what my primary said, just super offhandedly. What do you think? And, she put me through all the tests and she was like, oh gosh, you are very, very hypermobile. But of course, I knew that because I've been living in my body my whole life. I know I'm super bendy and Gumby and it's fantastic. But she was definitively like, oh yeah, you've got some things. And the reason that was cool for me was because this particular geneticist gave me so many resources. And she sat down with me for like an hour and a half and basically like talked through all the different symptoms that I had been having, and all the different ways that hypermobility can affect the body. Like I had been having some serious like stomach kind of reflux stuff going on at the time. And I didn't even realize that could have been a symptom of being hypermobile, because hypermobility goes beyond just like your joints and your like functional like ligaments being overly mobile. It can impact your internal tissues as well, your organs, your bones. And so that is why if you do suspect or think that you might be hypermobile, it's a good idea to go and just check in with your primary, see if you can get a referral for a geneticist or maybe even a physical therapist that has experience in this realm, because there could just be more going on than you think. Not going to say there is. Like I said, there's a whole spectrum of people that don't have any issues there. But it's always a good thing to know. So that would be step one. Obviously, going and checking in with your healthcare providers, your doctors. Comment if you need some recommendations and you're in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, because we just happen to be very lucky and there are a lot of people around here. But Google exists for a reason. So there you can always look and see if you can find people online. And then beyond that, the next step is going to sound way, way too oversimplified, but hypermobility is a very, very easy like issue and syndrome to become very complicated. And at the risk of oversimplifying, the next step that I took beyond just like going to see my primary and getting all this research was taking all of that information that I got from my doctors and kind of picking and choosing, all right, which ones work best for me? Like, you know, there was a lot of supplementation that was recommended. There was a lot of like movement and exercise and all these different things. And at first I was totally overwhelmed because I was just like, oh my God, this is like new territory. And I'm a fitness professional, so I do this all the time. But even I can recognize that it can be kind of overwhelming. So my next step of advice for you would be take some time to experiment with the modalities, the treatments, whatever it is that really work best for you and that jive best for your body. Personally, for me, it's been working actually with a chiropractor, which is not typically common practice for people with hypermobility EDS. I've worked with a kind of hypermobile friendly chiropractor for the last year, and I have found it to be extraordinarily helpful. I have completely changed the way that I approach fitness and recovery and rest, and those things have been completely helpful. I personally have gone gluten-free because I just finally decided, hey, I'm going to listen to my body and adjust my diet according to the signals it's telling me, and I have felt exponentially better. And that's not to say I don't have ups and downs. I'm, a hypermobile body. It's a condition that's not necessarily going away, but there are definitely things that you can do to help and mitigate the symptoms you have. Finally, after you've kind of tuned in and maybe figured out some of the things on your own that help optimize your body, that help you feel better, for those things that maybe you don't quite have a handle on or maybe aren't quite comfortable with yet, seek out professionals. Like I said, Google exists for a reason. There are tons of people coming out of the woodwork now, movement practitioners, physical therapists that are specializing in hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos, and just kind of these different issues that crop up within hypermobile bodies. So, for example, tooting my own horn here, but the line method works very regularly with hypermobile bodies within my studio. It's something as someone who has hypermobility that I'm just super passionate about doing. But then even beyond that, looking for maybe massage practitioners, nutritionists, people that are just familiar and comfortable with working with a hypermobile body is another really, really good option. And like I said before, I mean, if you need assistance finding resources, shoot me a DM, drop something in the comments, because there's a whole world of people coming out of the woodwork now helping you figure out this process. And you should never feel like you have to do it alone, because there are just so many resources in this part of the country, but also just all over. And one of the best things about the post-pandemic world is that Zoom exists. So even if your practitioner is halfway across the world, you can make it happen. But anywho, I am going to jump off there. I hope, just to kind of give you a little bit of a recap, that these resources were helpful. So first and foremost, always go and check in with a medical professional and just get their perspective and insight. Check in with your own body after that. Check in with how you're feeling, with how you're experiencing symptoms, if you're experiencing symptoms. And then after that, once you kind of find a rhythm that works for you, see if you can track down some professionals in the areas that you need the most help. So if nutrition is something that's a super simple thing for you to get a handle on, but maybe the movement and exercise is something that's a little more tricky, reach out to a professional and see how you can get some help, and be picky and choosy, because the better people you work with and the more you enjoy it, the better you're gonna feel at the end of the day. So I am gonna jump off there. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope to see you guys back here for another Hypermobile Hangout soon. I promise I will get something a little bit more of a regular schedule going, but honestly for now I've just been doing it when I have 15 minutes in between sessions. So I am gonna jump off to my next session. You guys have a lovely day, and I will see you guys back here soon. Bye.